Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Soul Shift. It's me, Dani, and today I am sharing a very personal story and experience with y'all, which is my diagnosis of PTSD. Very new. I'm still not used to it and not even having to, but just even the thought of it brings a lot of emotions up for me. But yes, we're going to talk about that today. Let's get into it. So before I actually share my story, I want to address what PTSD actually is. I don't want to assume that anyone knows. Um, PTSD is post traumatic stress disorder, and it is a mental health condition that's triggered by a terrifying event. You can either witness something or experience something, and it can cause symptoms like flashbacks of the event, nightmares, severe anxiety, uncontrollable thoughts about the event. And it's not always just the mind, the body too. It can feel like you are in a constant state of high alert or panic. I would describe my experience as being in a constant state of preparing for a tragedy. I was a very optimistic person before this event. I really was like, oh, the bright side, nothing's going to go wrong, everything's going to be great. I am preparing for tragedy most of the time now. So I'm going to talk briefly about what started all of this for me. But if the story seems a bit vague, please understand that my family does listen to this podcast, including my little cousins. And I don't want to trigger anyone else or cause any kind of sadness by sharing certain details. So just keep that in mind. So let's get into it. Like I mentioned before, my Uncle Reggie, my mom's little brother, he passed away on September 12th, 2021. During his baseball game, he was injured and he just couldn't recover. That day, my cousin was at the field and he called my dad to let us know we needed to get to the field as soon as possible because my uncle was hurt. So my dad tells us that. We're kind of like, oh, okay, what'd he do? So I'm thinking, oh, he broke his finger or his hand again, because up until now, that was pretty much the extent of his injuries. He would, hurt his wrist, hurt his fingers, hurt his hands, cuts, bruises, nothing too crazy. So I was thinking, okay, he just can't drive. We need to go to the hospital just to make sure, he gets patched up. My mom kind of was the same. She's like, all right, what'd he do? Let's get down here so we can make sure he's fine. And my dad says, no, y'all need to hurry up. They're doing CPR. And I've never felt anything like my stomach felt like in that. And when he said that, it was just like I was just hollow. It was like everything just fell from me. Cause I was like, what? CPR? What happened? But still not fully like registering what that means. So we hopped in the car. My dad decided to stay home with Nova. Nova was only 2 at the time, so I was like, okay, we're not taking her right now. Um, my dad stayed with her. Chris, my mom, and I hopped in the car. We headed to the field. I don't remember if I called or if they called me, but while in the car, a family friend called us, or we spoke to a family friend, and I remember getting her on the phone and just saying, can you please tell us what's going on? Because none of us are there. He's there by himself, essentially. His baseball friends are there and some of his distant family's there. But, all of us who, has information and knows him, and my grandmother with his insurance stuff, all his kids, everyone is away from him right now. I'm asking her, just, can you tell us anything? Please update us. Let us know. And she's telling us, he was hurt. The medical team is here. They're working on him, and the Helicopter's on the way. And in that moment, I was like, oh, thank God, like the helicopter's coming. They can get to him fast. They can get him to a hospital so fast. He's young. He just turned 44. His birthday was the week before. He's going to be fine. Like if they can get him, he's good. And I remember saying, did they stop CPR? Is he up now? And she said, no, they're still doing CPR. And my mom just lost it. She let go of the wheel. She was just so distraught. She couldn't remember how to get to the field. So I'm trying to hold together. I'm like, okay, Christopher, find the address on Google. Give us the address because I don't know how to get there. She couldn't remember how to get there after that. Just trying to hold together. But we make our way there. We finally get there and we couldn't get too close. He was still in the field. He was surrounded by a med team. The helicopter had landed. It was there on the field with him, and they were still doing CPR. We got there. And at that moment, I still fully 100% believed he would be fine. Like I mentioned in one of my earlier episodes, I prayed so hard and I just believed God's got him. God's got the helicopter here. The wind was just knocked out of him. He'll be fine. They just need to get him to the hospital, fix him up. He'll be fine. He'll be in the hospital for a couple days. No more baseball for a while. He's going to be fine. And then they picked up the stretcher, like they clicked it up off the ground so they can get ready to put him in the helicopter. And when they did that, I saw his arm just flop off the side of the gurney. Totally lifeless. And I instantly began to panic. It was in that exact moment, and I will never forget this till the day that I'm gone. It was that moment that I felt in my soul that he wasn't going to make it. Like I just knew. It was like I could feel it in that moment that he was gone. So they put him in the helicopter and I was frozen. It started flying away, and if you've been around a helicopter, we're at a baseball field. There's sand everywhere. So it's just wind and sand, and I'm just frozen staring at this helicopter. And I couldn't believe it. It was like I was in a dream. And I wanted to wake up. I could not believe what I was seeing. So the battalion chief comes over to us, and my husband, Chris, like snaps me out of it and gets me to focus so I could hear what he's trying to tell us. And he says, his prognosis is very grave and his heart is still not beating, but we're going to give him a fighting chance. And when he said that, my mom almost fell to the ground. And I remember looking at her and not being able to move or help her in any way. And I still had no words. And I still just stood there staring at him in complete. I could hear everything, but it was almost like in a movie where you see things like flying by and someone's like out of their body. It was like that. I could see my mom. I could see some of the baseball people talking to me. I could see the battalion chief, but it was kind of just like, what the hell is going on? So Chris gets my mom in the car. He gets me in the car and he drives to the hospital because the chief was like, get there immediately. The helicopter's going to beat you there. They'll be working on him. Make it there. So we meet some of our family at the hospital. And when we got there, there was a nurse that told us that we all could go into this conference room, waiting room to wait for the doctor to speak to us. There's like 6, 7, 8 of us at this point because I've called, our people and I'm like, meet us there. He had an accident. We're on our way. Helicopter has him. So everyone's like hustling to get to the hospital to meet at the hospital. We get there. Everyone's trickling in. There's almost 10 of us. And it's COVID. This is 2021. Masks are required and not optional in the hospital. And there's a limit to visitors. And they said, all of you and whoever's on the way, All of y'all can go in that room together. No worries. Everybody's going. Ignore that COVID sign. All of y'all are going in the room. So once again, my stomach sank. Because what do they have to tell us? That they're making this special accommodation for all of us to be in this secluded, cozy room with couches and tissues. Long story short, the doctor came in and told us what we already suspected. And I blacked out. My mom and Chris told me some things that I may have said then, but I don't remember. I cannot tell you a bit. The next thing I remember in that moment is asking the doctor to see him. I remember Chris walking me and taking me to trauma room 3. I'll never forget it. And I walked in and I saw my uncle and he looked perfect. He looked fine. And I don't remember exactly what happened then, but Chris said I just started just losing it. I just told the workers, that you can fix him, take him to surgery. He is healthy. Look at him. He's fine. He just needs you to, do whatever. And I remember just saying, he's healthy. He has a healthy heart. He's fine. And Chris said that the nurse said, get her some water, take her in the waiting room, bring her back in a little bit, and just let her, let her take it in for a second. And we were there for, however long we were. And then it came a point where we had to leave. And I remember just being so sad. I did not want to leave him there. I could have held his hand forever. I did not want to leave him at that hospital. But we had to go. So the days after, obviously we have to start planning for his service. And I was tasked with his outfit, which was such an honor, but also a very crushing thing to do at the same time. And throughout all this process, obviously, his cell phone is on. We knew that some calls may come in that my mom needed to handle business for him. And I remember that Monday, because this happened on a Sunday. So that next day, I was at my mom's house and his phone rang and I answered it. And it was his boss. His job was calling. And they were looking for him because he hadn't showed up. And I remember that just breaking my heart so bad. He just wasn't there. No one knew. They didn't know. He just wasn't at work. And they called looking for him, called his cell phone. I remember answering and they said, Reggie, is that you? And I tell them, I remember them being so shocked and so sad. Another moment then that stood out was his baseball team. So he had 2 baseball teams. He played 2 games on Sunday. So that game that he had his accident was the second game that day. He had already been to the first game sometime that week. I can't remember if it was that Monday or when it was, but the other team called to check in for him because he missed practice. He missed a game that wasn't like him. And I had to go through the same thing again, letting them know what happened. They were devastated. That team was devastated. And I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. I could not believe that I was talking about him in the past tense, saying he was gone. I just couldn't believe it. And I continued to be in a state of shock. For weeks, it seemed. I felt like I wasn't sleeping. I was always replaying that day in my mind. I was pissed off. And y'all, I cried every single day for a year. And that is not an exaggeration. Every day, multiple times a day, sobbed. I cried every day until September 12th, 2022, because on that day, the 1 year anniversary of his passing, I cried so much that I could not cry anymore. It had been a year since I'd last physically seen him. And I sobbed. I cried and cried and cried. But after that year, the tears, they stopped for the most part. But this is where the story picks up because my brain didn't. The tears stopped and it seemed like I was okay. But my brain did not let up. So the first thing that I noticed is that I had become, and I still am, to be honest with you, obsessed with time. So I categorize things as the before time and the after. So any picture I look at, whether it's me, my family, my daughter, a friend, anything, I immediately look at it and I think of when it was taken and I categorize it as before losing Uncle Reggie and after. And I don't have to try, it just happens automatically. I have a gallery wall in my living room and it has like 9 pictures on one of the walls. And as soon as I see those pictures, I start thinking, okay, before Uncle Reggie passed, this was 6 months before, this was 2 weeks. Like I do that automatically, before and after. I see those pictures every day. They're in my house. And I do that every single time I look at them. My parents have that like the Amazon photos filter where you can, look through and see, like you can set your Amazon photos to be your background as your TV like idols. Every photo when I'm at their house, my brain just starts processing. Oh, August, that was right before we lost him. Oh, this happened then. Oh, this is before. Every time. I just think of time and events that way now. Another thing, watching medical shows. It used to be just a very carefree, mindless thing my husband and I used to do. We still watch, but it's not carefree and mindless anymore. And I mean, we love like Grey's Anatomy, the drama type shows, and the real ones where it's like shock trauma, actually following doctors around the ER. It's not as fun now. And it can go a few different ways of watching them. I can be triggered by like CPR scenes or the medical helicopters, or I can be hypercritical. And I mean hypercritical. Usually we get the hyper criticism. Like usually I am lasered in and I will analyze and compare the person on TV and their situation to my uncle's situation, whether it's the Grey's Anatomy version or the shock trauma real life version. If someone survived something similar, I am looking at it like, what did they do that Uncle Reggie's doctors couldn't do? How did that happen? And if I hear a medical term that could possibly be something that related, I'm Googling it, I'm researching it. I am always looking for information to explain what has happened. And we know what happened, right? Like the medical examiner explained it. We know, but I'm just obsessed with finding out more and feeling like I'm always looking for the answer. And for some reason, I feel like I owe that to him. Like I need to always be figuring out more, finding out more about what could have happened and how it could have been prevented. Hospitals, surprisingly, are overall okay. I don't really have a problem with the hospital, but no one that I know and I'm going to visit can be in room 3. If they put my family in those rooms, I ask them to be moved. My mom and Nova had surgery earlier this year, and it was very important that they were not in room number 3. My mom had to be there at like 5 a.m. or something, and we came later. And I remember texting her and my father and saying, do not let them put you in room number 3. I don't know if they even knew why it mattered, and they probably just blew me off and didn't even say anything to them. But if they were in room number 3 when I got there, I would have lost it. I would not be able to take it, and they would have had to move my mother. Baseball. It is a big old hell no. I don't watch it. I scroll real fast past the social media posts for it. I do follow the Orioles because I feel like I need to be like updated on my uncle's behalf. That's his team. But I don't enjoy it. It brings so much anxiety for me. Um, there is going to be an event later honoring my uncle at a baseball field, a game actually. And I'm going because I wouldn't miss an opportunity to honor him and celebrate his life. But I'm going to be there just on pins and needles the entire time because I don't do baseball. Just talking about it right now, my heart is beating out of my chest. But we will pray through that one. And seeing cars like my uncle, that's something else that brings mixed emotions. Typically, my uncle, he drove a black Charger and a black Dodge Charger. And he always had the windows down. He never had his air conditioner on. Either it was broken or he wasn't using it because he wanted to save gas. He just was always looking over his steering wheel in his black Charger. And when I see cars like his now, it either makes me laugh because I think about him peeking over the steering wheel, or it makes me sad because I think about going back to the field that Monday and having to pick up his car because he drove to the game and we had to get it the next day. And all of this is freaking exhausting. It is exhausting. And this is how I've been living for the last 3 years. And most of it's just internal, undercover. I don't like to burden people with my stuff, but y'all, it's exhausting. And I have a therapist, and I never even shared all of these things with her. Like, she knows about the incident, but all of these things, the things I was telling you that I do just mentally, that didn't come up. And they probably wouldn't because they're so specific. Like, she wouldn't just say that. But Chris, I don't remember why I brought it up or how it came up, but he found out about how I categorize time. And I remember him reacting in a way I was not expecting. Like, he really was concerned about it. And he was like, tell her all of that, because that's not, you don't need to do that. That's exhausting. You don't need to think of time that way. It's not healthy for you to think of time that way. So I did. I told her. And that led to more convos about things. And as suspected, I was diagnosed with PTSD. And it was both a relief and shock to kind of have a name for what I was going through. I wasn't just being overly sensitive or dramatic, but my brain is actually trying to process a trauma, a tragedy. And it might sound crazy, but I haven't done anything with that information yet. I haven't done anything about it. They want me to take these very specific therapies. There's very specific types they want me to go through for this that are dedicated to PTSD. And I just haven't done that yet because I don't know that I want to. It is a lot. I know that I need to. Let me put that out there. I know that I need to. I just don't know when I want to, because it is a lot to be faced with that and have to relive that. Telling the story right now is a lot. I can't imagine having to do it on that other scale for healing. So I just have not done that. I've avoided it. They have not recommended medication. They don't think that that's necessary yet. And I don't think I would go down that road right now anyway. But yeah, that's really it. That's life right now for me. That's life. And that's okay. I am okay. I am always healing and learning and growing. I am okay. I'm going to be okay. But that's life at the moment. And if you relate, if you have PTSD, know someone with it, want to talk about something, my DMs are always open. I love talking to y'all in there every week. And that's a wrap. But before we go, I have a quick announcement. This episode marks the end of season 1 of Soul Shift. It has been an incredible journey sharing these moments with y'all, and I'm so grateful for all of your support and the community that we have started to build together. So thank you from the very bottom of my heart for being here and listening week after week. Your messages and your comments and your stories have meant so much. This is exactly what I wanted this to be when I decided I was going to do this podcast. I've always wanted a podcast, but I wanted to have a real meaning and a real purpose. And Soul Shift just embodies everything that I've been feeling. Just, I'm a different person than I once was, and we go through shifts. And it's good to know that someone else feels the same. And connecting with you guys in my DMs has been wonderful. You've made this experience so meaningful, and I wanted it to be authentic and real, and I have that. And this is just the beginning. We have so much more to do and to discuss. But don't worry, we're not saying goodbye for long. We'll be back on August 16th with season 2 to bring you more real conversations. But until then, stay strong, stay resilient, and keep embracing the shifts. See you in season 2. Bye.